We are pleased to welcome our next two speakers to the stage. Co-founder and CEO of Giving Tech Labs, Luis Salazar, and co-founder and chief marketing officer of Giving Tech Labs, Shelly Cano Kurtz.
Welcome. We are your hosts for the next 45 minutes, and I hope that you are now inspired about the power of technology for good after Jeff's talk. And I want to welcome you to our city. Here in Seattle is where Giving Tech Labs was born. And we're going to talk a little bit today about technology for public interest. We are a Seattle-based innovation lab, and we focus on bringing the best of the private sector work that has been done around digital media, artificial intelligence, cloud technology, and ultimately scalable business models to ensure that the work that is created in the lab and in your work sessions inside your nonprofits can really have long-lasting impact. Luis and I came together because we saw the opportunity to really take a different type of an approach. I'm going to find my clicker so I can keep going on. We have a little technical difficulty. We have a little.
Who has a clicker?
We need a clicker. So all of this is not going to be as exciting if you have to watch the same girl with the balloons the whole time. So, Jeff, I mean, really? Is this the literati way? Okay, there we go. Now we're cooking with Crisco. Okay. I mean, I can talk for a long time. A lot of people here have heard me go on for hours. I don't need to have a clicker, but it's helpful. So even though you may not have heard of Giving Tech Labs, we dare say we've met before. Our team comes from some of the biggest tech, media, and entertainment companies in the world. Companies like Microsoft, where Luis co-founded Office 365 14 years ago at the early days of cloud technology with Jeff Rakes, who was formerly the CEO of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who now runs the Rakes Foundation with his wife, Tricia. We're lucky to have them as board mentors and advisors. To companies like NBC Universal, where I spent 15 years, along with companies like Google, Yahoo, Viacom, and more. Unlike most presentations where you may be asked to silent your phones, we want to encourage you to participate in the conversation today. So we ask you to use your mobile devices and tweet and Instagram post and share out the content that you're learning using the hashtag #TechForPI, Technology for Public Interest. We want to invite you to join this movement, gaining speed right here in Seattle around ways in which technology can have an impact in your organization and in society at large. Now you're in for a real treat as Luis shares our 10 principles of tech for public interest and walks you through the vision we have about how to make the world a little bit of a better place.
Well, let's see if we can figure out how to fix the screens. And meanwhile, thank you, Shelly. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We're going to tell a story, our story, and the story of the technology for public interest movement in the context of these three things that you see on the screen that we think are intertwined: technology, society, and nonprofits. And how can we create technology for the benefit of the public? And this starts with technology. We all come from, in our case, in our innovation lab, where we incubate new technologies. We all have a technology background. And technology changed my life. Technology have had such a positive impact on humanity, but particularly thanks to technology. I started my career in technology in 1987 with my first personal computer and my first startup, creating a payroll solution for small businesses. And from that personal computer, 1987, to today, in this watch, I have more computing power than what the entire department of computer sciences that was not called computer sciences back then at my university had. So it has been a wild ride. And I am humble and amazed at in the ways in which technology have changed our life. But now that technology doesn't even live in the computer or the device, it lives in this thing that we call the cloud that when I was the age of my 23-year-old, we used the cloud only in the context of weather forecast. And now here we are in a cloud technology conference. And how many of us are using the cloud? And in this crowd, well, I assume that all of you are using the cloud somehow to help you deliver on your mission. But this question was asked recently. This is the results of answering that set of questions by 5,300 nonprofit organizations in 164 different countries and using a balanced sample. And I was checking the stats on the participants of this conference and also talking with many of you, and roughly 50% of the audience of the nonprofit organizations in this room have revenues of less than $10 million. That's not the norm. If we go out there, the number of organizations with $10 million or more is not 50%, is roughly 1%. But this is how you answer these questions, and evidently, yes, we're using the cloud for online presence, for social media, for fundraising. 73% of you are using some form of online fundraising, but there are some areas of opportunity from the way in which we encrypt our data and deal with security, especially when you manage the data of so many vulnerable populations. So there are some rooms for growth, improvement there, and also on the area of creating mission-critical applications. But in general, we are all benefiting from the cloud today. This is a very famous graph that I'm positive each one of you have seen, and there is so much that happens in the cloud, and on every single minute we are sending 250 million emails or text messages or WhatsApp or whatever application you are using every 60 seconds. Every 60 seconds we're spending $1 million online, a chunk of that at Amazon, and every 60 seconds we are shipping 180 smart speakers. Now, fast forward 5 years from now, and imagine how the world is going to change, because we are fundamentally going away from the keyboard-based interface that was born out of the typewriter. By the way, till my senior year in college, my key piece of technology was a mechanical typewriter. So that is a paradigm that inspired the creation of the human-computer interface. But with these many smart speakers everywhere in the world, our interactions will change fundamentally. But there are other things that require our attention. As a technologist, I feel very proud about all those things that we can do in the cloud every single minute. But there are other things that happen in the cloud that happen every 60 seconds. And these are US-only stats. So as a technologist, I don't feel that proud that we are not working harder to address these problems. So think about it. We have managed to master the way to match each one of us with the perfect book, with the perfect restaurant, bar, with a driver. We're even swiping left and right to find love or companionship. But we have not managed to apply the same fundamental principles of matching to match the $300,000 worth of produce that are going to be wasted in the next 60 seconds with the 40 million people that face hunger in the US, 30 million of which are children. And beyond the emotional and physical pain associated with these problems, and this is a subset of the problems in society, beyond that emotional and physical pain, and if you want to put that aside, if I am a person that lacks total empathy, these problems cost the US economy $3 billion per day. So even if you don't want to do it to mitigate physical or emotional pain, there is a valid financial reason to try to address this. And that is what each one of you is doing every day in your nonprofit organization's work. And this is a snapshot of the US. I know that we have some international visitors. The US nonprofit sector is a healthy ecosystem, over 1 million charitable organizations, as I said, 98% under $10 million in revenues. And together, they represent a $2 trillion economy. And that's a big number. So if we think about the nonprofit sector as a big box, there are $2 trillion worth of transactions going through that box every single year. Yet, we're not where it should be in terms of technology adoption. Why? And that was a big puzzle for Shelly, for me, for the Rakes when we started to think about what can we do. And there are several schools of thought. Some people will argue, well, in the nonprofit sector, we do not invest as much as a percentage of our operating revenue in technology. Well, the fact is that's a true statement. On average, it's 10 times lower. Another argument is fragmentation. Oh, we are fragmented. 1 million nonprofits. We have a shelter in Seattle, a shelter in Spokane, a shelter in Miami, a shelter in New York, a shelter in Alabama. We're fragmented. And that's true. But fragmentation is not unique to a sector. Every single sector is fragmented. It's basic economics. Food and beverage. There is one McDonald's, we saw a lot of littering, or one Taco Bell at the top. But there are tens of thousands of mom and pop restaurants. The brother of my co-founder, my COO, Dave, has a fantastic pizza place nearby. And he can use the same state-of-the-art technology that Taco Bell or McDonald's uses for handling accounting, the back office, reservations, loyalty programs that McDonald's uses. So fragmentation is not a problem. The problem is that I think the tech sector is failing the nonprofit organizations by not helping to address the gap that exists between the fundamental building blocks of technology, such as the cloud, and the needs associated with delivering on the mission. And if you are a large nonprofit, you will say, yeah, but I have an IT department that can take care of this, and that's true. But for the 1 million, for the other 1 million, not the 17,000 nonprofits in the US have revenues of $10 million or more, and they have an IT department. 1 million, they don't have that. So for them, the tech sector has been failing them by not addressing the gap that has been addressed in the private sector by a healthy ecosystem of solution providers, independent software vendors. So we started to ask ourselves, what if we bring the learnings associated with business modeling and artificial intelligence and technology to the nonprofit sector? And quickly we realized that was a very arrogant question to ask. It's that superhero mentality. Oh, here we come, technology, we're going to rescue the sector. And we realized that the right question to ask is, how can we bring technology to help, especially with a large base of nonprofit, that 1 million nonprofits only in the US that are trying to address these complex problems. And that is what we're calling creating technology for public interest, because it's more than technology. Technology alone does not solve the problems So we need to address multiple dimensions, and those are the things that we're going to share in the context of 10 principles. And then Shelly will join us to talk about how we apply these principles to addressing one of the problems that you saw on the screen, which is the sad reality that every minute 1.3 children are sexually abused in the US. So Shelly is going to walk us through that case study, how we built the leading cloud solution to help with that problem, built on AWS, of course, and is going to illustrate each one of the principles I'm going to share with you. The number one is, let's make sure that you're focusing on solving a problem that matters. We already solved the problem of the photo filter for Instagram. That problem, check. We don't need another one. Focus on solving a problem that matters, and as much as possible, elevate the problem to a systemic level. Work together. And working together means with a collective approach. To solve any problem, we need to reach out. That has been our experience, that we need to reach out to many different subject matter experts, academia, government, sources of capital, and the NPOs that are the ones that know about the problem like nobody else. When we started to build VidaNix, which is a solution that Shelly will talk about with us, one of the first meetings Shelly had was with the CIO of the FBI to learn, okay, how can we protect these children? How do we design this in such a way that is going to be foolproof? We met Department of Justice with many other organizations trying to create something that was going to be useful to address that problem. But that only happens if we work together. Because technology alone does not solve problems. People do. And we learn, and the best, we have some beautiful examples, but I'd rather use an example that we saw this morning. The power of digital technology for public interest is also about the power of digital media for storytelling and to move people from awareness into action. And we just heard a fantastic example of that. We saw how by taking pictures, which raise awareness of the problem, eventually translated into taking action of removing the root cause of that littering. That's another powerful thing that technology for public interest can bring, to create empathy and inclusion. And we live these crazy times. And as much as I love technology, it breaks my heart when I see technology that is being used to divide rather than to unite us. So we create this fantastic way to connect with each one of us across the globe, and we're using that to seed division. But well-applied technology for public interest is about creating empathy and inclusion and the sense of belonging. One of our core incubations right now is related to reinventing the largest nonprofit in the world that helps families of children with intellectual differences. Children with Down syndrome, children with autism, and other forms of intellectual differences. And the core element of using that technology for public interest is how do we make them feel that they belong, that they are part of this society. It's also about providing new career paths. It's possible to do good and do well, and that's something that we really want to bring to all the way to academia. So there is a movement that started by the Ford Foundation related to public interest technology, changing the curricula of our universities. So far, 20 universities pledged to that, and they're trying to replicate what was done in the United States in the 1950s with the public interest law. And now they're saying, okay, let's change. And the results of public interest law are fantastic. So the thought process is, what if we do the same, but for engineering, computer science, applied math, and related sciences? But guess what? When these kids graduate, where are they going to work? All these kids are going to have a student debt of some form. They will want to have a family. They will want to have a place to live, etc. So it's important that technology for public interest create career paths for these children, kids to have their career doing good while doing well. And it's also about technology for public interest. It's also about building operational capacity in the field. And over the past 2 years, this is the area that surprised me the most. The tech sector, with very good intentions, in some cases, is creating more problems than solutions. We deploy volunteers. 3 months, we're going to create something for you, and this is a solution, this is all the aggregated data. Here you have it, and now with this aggregated data, you can plan your crop better. And you can do better agriculture. And by the way, I need to go back to my job because this was only a 3 months volunteering permit I got. Let me go back. 3 months later, that solution will collapse because there is no one to do the maintenance. We didn't build capacity in the field to keep running that. And if you want to read a fantastic book, humbling book on how technology is failing us, read, it's called The Geek Heresy by Kentaro Toyama. I have no association with that. And I heard Kentaro in a public forum. When he said that, I was so mad I wanted to punch him. Because what do you mean that we're failing society? You are not looking at what we're doing? And his book is very telling. And it's humbling. I mean, we don't recognize the problem, we're never going to fix it. And part of the problems that we need to fix is, now that we're embarking on digital transformation, there are many laws and regulations that we will need to work on changing. There is no law in the US related to handling video evidence on sexual abuse cases over the internet, because when the laws were written, the internet didn't exist. So now that if we are trying to address that problem, we also need to work with regulators and lawmakers on influencing those changes. Otherwise, the process will not work and the nonprofits will not be able to do their job. Data is at the core of everything right now. We have heard a lot about data over the past 24 hours. This is evident to most of you. I will say that the nonprofit sector is data rich and is knowledge hungry. And it's so important to start transforming. What if we could imagine, just imagine the power of using that data for good. I assume that all of you are familiar with Cambridge Analytics, right? Okay. So that data was used to create division, influence genocides, electoral results. We have a wild imagination on what to do when we want to create harm. But imagine the same data applied for good. The power of that same data to change our behavior in other ways, to litter less, to have more compassion, to include others, to accelerate the pace at which researchers learn. On average, the scientists working on mitigating PTSD treatment works with 10 to 20 data points per year because it's super hard to get those cases, those transcriptions of interviews with survivors of abuse. With our solution, we think that we're going to provide 100,000 of those cases per year, removing PII to those scientists. What will happen if the academia, researchers, suddenly have free access to all that data? Imagine the impact that we can have. And finally, our last principle in technology for public interest is making sure that it's sustainable. Otherwise, it's not going to, you know how expensive technology is, how expensive it is well, not expensive is the right value that you get from deploying technology, from hiring the right talent to keep technology up to date. And that means there has to be some form of sustainability. But what we argue is that when you take a look at the $2 trillion box, if you identify an area where you can be of service by helping those NPOs to deliver on their mission cheaper, faster, better, which is what technology in general do something cheaper, faster, better, you can rightfully use part of those savings as a compensation to keep that technology going. Sustainability is an important part of our thought process for technology for public interest. And the most important one is this concept of make creating technology for public interest your ikigai. How many of you are familiar with ikigai, with the term ikigai? Ikigai is a Japanese word that means your reason for being alive, your reason for waking up every morning, your purpose. And ikigai, you can claim you have found your ikigai when you find a combination of the 4 dimensions. Are you doing something that the world needs? Are you doing something that you love? Are you doing something that you're good at? And are you doing something that you can get paid for? That way you don't need to make any trade-off. And we absolutely made a ikigai, a technology for public interest, our ikigai. We are in this quest trying to inspire as many people as we can to build technology for public interest and make that their ikigai. We even design our organization, our people review process, everything is around the concept of the ikigai, and we ask ourselves that question every so often. Do we still love it? And if you don't love it, great, we'll find you another way, another place where you can thrive and love what you do, but life is too short not to love what you do every single day. So we absolutely love what we're doing, and now I'm going to invite Shelly, that is going to walk us through VidaNix and how we are protecting survivors of abuse with cloud technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I don't have the cool Venezuelan accent or the Australian accent from Byron's speech yesterday, but I do have a really powerful use case about the ways in which technology for public interest were able to be used as a catalyst for wide-scale system change. This story starts with one conversation with one small nonprofit organization in Omaha, Nebraska. They support 2,000 children each year who come through their doors as survivors of sexual assault, abuse, and neglect. And we often host nonprofit leaders like you to engage in conversations about ways in which technology can help with mission delivery or just creating efficiency of process within their organization. And it was during one of these listening sessions that we first learned of the magnitude of the tech deficit that existed in organizations supporting survivors of child abuse. These organizations are called child advocacy centers. And when we first hosted this group of nonprofit leaders, we had never heard of a child advocacy center. Hopefully, many of you haven't either, because it's not the kind of place you want to go just to visit, just because. And luckily, there are a network of care centers, over 850 accredited child advocacy centers all over the US, supporting these children. And the numbers are staggering. 1 in 10 children are likely to be sexually abused before their 18th birthday. And this was a Tech for PI opportunity that isn't often talked about around dinner tables or boardrooms. There are certainly a lot of high-profile cases, and I'm happy to see this subject getting more attention over the last couple years with high-profile cases like the US gymnastics team and the Catholic Church and R. Kelly, and most recently Jeffrey Epstein, because it's an important topic that needs to be looked at from all angles. So what was the tech challenge? When we first learned of child advocacy centers and their status quo, we were pretty shocked to learn that VHS tapes and DVDs were the norm in terms of their technology solutions and how they managed child forensic interviews. The child forensic interview is a process that starts when there is an allegation of abuse. Usually a child discloses to a family member or often someone at school. Sadly, the reports of abuse tend to clump up in times when children feel that they may be closest to a trusted adult or ally, and where they may be going into a situation where they no longer have that trusted person. So if you think about that, it's usually before school gets out in the summer, or after they've come back from holiday break, after something has happened. And so the first step in this process is to have the child go to a child advocacy center and be able to share their account with someone who is trained in child behavior and interviewing techniques to ensure that these children are no longer taken to an interrogation room at a police station, as might have happened 30 years ago, but instead are in a child-friendly environment to share their account and be able to start the healing, but also the criminal justice process. Unfortunately, the way that the system operates is that there are many members of multidisciplinary teams that need to understand what happened. The good news is that because the content is recorded, the child has a minimized traumatic experience so that they just tell it once, and it's recorded on interview recording equipment. But the problem is that then the forensic interviewer has to go from having this very intense conversation with a child, often as young as 2 or 3 or 4 years old, unfortunately, and then go in the room next door and suddenly put on their IT manager hat and burn DVDs while you have an impatient investigator saying, "Where's the DVD? I have to go investigate another case. I've got to go." And a prosecutor waiting for the content. So they are burning DVDs, distributing copies to each of the members of this care team. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of opportunities for mishandling of that evidence. There have been breaches where that content has ended up on YouTube and in other social media channels. And there was really an opportunity for us to say, wow, there is a better way. Why in the world is our content coming from Netflix more protected and encrypted and secured than our most vulnerable citizens in our country that have experienced unimaginable trauma? Digital access control and rights management has been available for content in the private sector for years. And so it was here that a Tech for PI solution was born from the ground up. And we could have just created a video management system for that one nonprofit in Omaha where they had an acute situation where they needed to create a secure sharing mechanism for this content. But instead, we really took a systemic approach to say, how many other organizations are there like yours? And what are they doing? And when we learned that in many cases, they were storing this content in off-site storage sheds, they were paying $1,000 a month for storage containers for this content that ultimately, when it was needed for a case, may not even be playable. There's content degradation. And so we said, we're going to build one scalable solution using cloud technology through AWS and protect all children and all of these agencies doing the good work with one simple solution from the ground up. So VitaNix was created to securely store, manage, and archive forensic interviews for child advocacy centers as the primary customer base. And we used the name VitaNix, number one, as a nod to the video as the central player in the process, but also because Vita means life in Spanish, and Nix is the god that rules over all other gods and men in Greek mythology. And we're mission-driven to ultimately create this virtual protector of life. VitaNix was built to ingest video files from a variety of different interview recording equipment types, as well as digital file formats in an easy upload or drag and drop user experience for our very non-technical user base. These are mostly social workers and forensic interview staff that in many cases have really a different experience with technology. Technology has been something that has made their lives harder in many cases. The bureaucratic systems that don't work well together, the outdated technology, the stress of having to go into different systems and deal with hardware and software downloads. So we created VitaNix so that it is a browser-based solution without any on-site IT support needed, or maintenance, or equipment to be shipped, or software to download. Because the original problem statement from that nonprofit in Omaha was around security and privacy, we architected a multi-layered approach using AWS and other solution partners to ensure best-in-class cybersecurity. And we used building blocks to take this product where the sector didn't even think it was possible. We added in elements to ensure that who watched the video was always authenticated through identity control using multi-factor authentication, which is a fancy way of saying that you get a text message that you must enter that code into in order to show two forms of ID so that that detective or prosecutor or social worker must prove they are who they say they are. There's also security measures that we looked at in terms of getting third-party penetration testing and auditing of our AWS infrastructure as well as our solution. And then we deployed a polymorphic version of Linux by an amazing company based here in Seattle called Polyverse that scrambles the source code and protects against outside cyber attacks. And lastly, we got HIPAA ready because of the personally identifiable health information that we must maintain in order to comply with hospital-based child advocacy center compliance needs. In just 8 months since the launch of VitaNix in that small nonprofit organization in Omaha, I'm really proud to say that we've driven digital transformation in, I think now 31 states for over 230 agencies that were previously handling physical pieces of evidence, mailing videos, using FedEx, driving across the state to be able to share this content. And now we're helping thousands of children each year with a cost-effective solution to support these agencies to do their work better. We created a distributed cost model with right-sized licensing so that large agencies with 3,000 children each year who are interviewed don't have to have the same license fee as a smaller nonprofit that only sees 400 children a year. So we really created a solution that would allow for collaboration even among these multidisciplinary agencies. So there's not a seat model. They can have this content shared with prosecutors and investigators and mental health professionals in a way in which helps their workflow. And in some cases, we've been able to speed up that digital workflow in a way that they never intended to have the consequence for expediting justice. But in fact, in many situations, the status quo was to first record the interview and then hand over that DVD to the police officer to investigate, and they would work on their investigation of the case for a month and then hand over that DVD to the DA to press charges and handle their case investigation. Instead, now they can simultaneously share this content that is encrypted and protected inside VitaNix to immediately give access to those stakeholders that need to see that, to expedite justice and also the healing of the child and reduce that PTSD. We've been able to turn data into knowledge, where previously this content was never aggregated, so no child advocacy centers or even the national accreditation body, the National Children's Alliance, had any insight into benchmarking. What was normal? What is an average length of a forensic interview video? What is the right approach to interview a 4-year-old versus a 14-year-old? How many different agencies is that content shared with? Do they watch it? Sadly, oftentimes, these videos would be distributed, and that investigator may not ever watch the video. And so now there is a digital chain of custody to show you exactly who watched it, when, and where. The defense cannot claim that they need to push back the trial because they did not have time to review the forensic interview, because we can say, yes, you did. You watched it 7 times last Tuesday. So turning data into knowledge in a way that was not envisioned early on is the opportunity for ethical AI, and we're really excited about being able to share data and create transparency. And so I invite you to go to vitanix.com and check out our impact report, as we publish daily reports showing the impact and the trends. You can see the percentage of use by agency, age of children protected, and ultimately this growing digital transformation that was possible because of a systemic approach to technology for public interest beyond that original use case in Omaha. This is Violet. She is our digital assistant and virtual ambassador. And she actually was on an earlier slide. We have some teddy bears that we send out to the child advocacy centers. But she has really demystified AI. If I talk to a typical social worker and tell them that we have AI built into VitaNix, that can sound a little intimidating, a little sci-fi. But Violet is there to ensure that they can ask questions. They don't have to feel intimidated if they don't know what a browser is, or they are unsure of how to go about their workflow. So if they're afraid to ask us, the people behind the work, they can always ask Violet. So in tech terms, she is a bot, but that doesn't sound very friendly. So she's a digital assistant, and we have used AI for closed captioning through AWS Transcribe as the ultimate tip of the iceberg in terms of ways in which technology can be applied towards mission delivery. When we started this journey, this was not even something that was requested from the field. They did not think it was possible. Most forensic interviews require either the police officer, which let me tell you, they do not have great typing skills, to actually do their own transcriptions. In one case, I heard of an investigator down in a rural area in Washington. He has one arm. Can you imagine having to type out a 1-hour forensic interview of a child that has been sexually assaulted when you only have one arm, which is perfectly good as an investigator, but really, is that the best use of our public dollars for that investigator to be typing the transcripts? Or in other cases, they were shipping them out to transcription services that were costing $300 a video, and that would require them to wait a week. In one urgent case, there was a forensic interviewer that said, I'm going to jump on the plane and fly with the video on the DVD to the transcription company in California so I could bring it back the next day because we want to make this arrest and I care about this child getting justice. And so now with transcription built in, we can add that layer not only for those individual cases to be processed much more efficiently, but also to aggregate the data in the cloud so that we can start looking with researchers at ways in which the field could move forward the PTSD reduction and techniques on how to help children heal. We're building field capacity beyond technology. We obviously needed to make sure the tech worked. That's the first part. But building in all of these other layers, we worked with organizations, as Luis mentioned, to help on advocating for the issue, learning about how we could change the system, create digital protocol that had never before been on the books. And we've met with the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice and the National District Attorneys Association and leading experts in the field to be able to influence legislation and ultimately also funding, because we know that this is a story that needs more attention, and it's an opportunity for all of us to get behind real impact, not just creating a product or a venture, but really looking at the root cause and unlocking funding so that more money can be spent upstream on prevention. In many ways, our team acts as, I would say, a little bit of a development office behind the scenes in many ways to bring attention to this issue that has gone unfunded in many ways. And so we look at ways to shift the mindset of the grant-making community from traditional infrastructure and hardware into cloud tech solutions like Vidanix that are custom created to solve these particular acute social problems at scale. We've brought grant dollars from corporations and individual philanthropists and family foundations and community foundations because we care about the opportunity for technology for public interest to make a real impact. Tech is not overhead. And anyone that tells you it is, please have them come see me, and I'm happy to share how this type of an approach can unlock those resources that previously have been tied up. And we saw there were child advocacy centers that now, because of Vidanix, could take an entire room in their small nonprofit organization that was previously used for viewing forensic interviews or storing filing cabinets full of videos, that now they can serve more capacity, serve more children. And in order to make sure that there's lasting capacity, we wanted to focus on sustainability. So we created Vidanix as a software as a service offering that has an annual subscription, and we have used this catalytic philanthropy to prove out the model to go in first in the same way that venture capital is able to unlock market dynamics, because we knew that there were many nonprofit organizations that wanted this solution, but were trapped in that world that many of you may be in between grant cycles, where the Department of Justice, in this case, funds child advocacy centers, but has an 18-month window. And so we were able to bring together large-scale support to be able to help move that impact forward. And our hope is that the eventual use of Vidanix by the private sector and in other use cases will create sustainability for this use case so that eventually child advocacy centers could use this solution for free, completely underwritten by those other markets. So going back to what Luis shared about Ikigai, we really believe that technology for public interest is our Ikigai. And Vidanix is one powerful example about what is possible when you can apply your Ikigai at scale. So remember the answers to the questions. Does the world need it? I think you'd all agree that Vidanix is a solution that has a powerful mission. Do you love doing it? Hopefully you can tell I love doing this. I can't believe that I have the opportunity to play one small role in this amazing, incredible group of change makers that are helping children heal every single day. Are you good at it? Luis and I always joke about the things that we love to do, but we really suck at, whether it's singing or cooking. My husband would agree I should stay away from both of those things. I like doing them, but they're definitely not my ikigai. And then, can you get paid for it? And in this case, we want Vitanix to live on much longer than what could be created as an early success of unlocking digital transformation. And so it's really important to look at that business model that can support the work that you're doing and hopefully inspire the creation of new technology for public interest. So now I'm going to invite Luis back up on stage because we really want you guys to think about what Tech for PI can do for your organization. There are a million ways in which technology can help support your mission delivery, but we'd like to invite you guys to think about ways in which technology for public interest is needed on the ground, in the field, or perhaps just looking at innovation or an idea you've been thinking about on your way to work to say, why are we doing it this way? I know my friends at Amazon don't have to do that. I know that people in the tech startup world aren't dealing with this. Why are we doing it that way? So we'd like to invite you to visit tforpi.org, tforpi.org, and share with us your organization's problem statements in your own words. And there really are no boundaries on this. We won't share it with your boss. This is just an opportunity for you to have the tech community listening. We really want to hear from you in your own words. This is an opportunity to create scalable solutions for you guys to be part of the innovation that happens so that you don't just have to be the consumers of technology that gets rolled out, but actually be able to work from the ground up. And when one conversation with one nonprofit could be creating something that has the impact of Vitanix, so too could your idea lead to something at scale. And those of you who choose to go to tforpi.org and share with us your organization's problem statements, or you can flip it and look at what your dream might be, you'll get early access to an exchange of Tech for PI that will be coming in small stages later this year, but will be announced in 2020. So we want to invite you all to be a change maker and join us in this revolution of technology for public interest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelly and Luis. Now that's a way to kick off day 2. Thank you to all of our speakers this morning. We'll now take a short break. Refreshments will be served in the back of the room and outside. And we'll see you back in this room at 10:30 for a cultural immersion into Amazon via our interactive Working Backwards workshop. In the meantime, enjoy some of the Seattle sun.